Welcome to O'Talkin' with Dave. Coming to you from his palatial fortress in Sin City, where what happens in Vegas is talked about everywhere. Put your hands together for the pastor of positivity whose glass is always at least half full. Here's Dave.
Hey, how we doing out there? I hope you're doing well. You ought to be. I'm top shelf and loving it. I've spent some time recently in Central Valley, California, and I absolutely love it. Now, one of the reasons is, that's where most of our food comes from. And so when I'm around farmers a lot, and just the whole farming mentality, which reminds me of my granddad, which it's always a good thing. Mama and Papa back on the farm. He grew up being a tobacco farmer by trade, but on his farm, I don't know, 360 acres, something like that. On his farm, he also, that's how he fed his family. He had creeks running through there, and he would trap, he would hunt, whatever. I mean, this is my mom was born in the late 30s, so that tells you the time frame. He later, when he was approximately, I'd say mid to late 30s, decided I've got to be able to feed my family of four, and farming is pretty unpredictable, so he became a machinist. That's how we went to Alabama. And so he worked for Ford for 35 years, and then went back to his farm. And this time he was farming for fun, for nostalgia. But I remember when he retired and moved back to the farm, I would hang out with him. And in the barns and outbuildings and all these things, we would go, and he could show me what they did and why they did it a certain way. I got to hang around him and other farmers who are older now and had time to talk to you. It was fantastic. And I learned a lot about that. Nothing went to waste. They used everything. Leftovers, if there were any, that went to feed animals or go into slopping the hogs, or, and when they had to kill an animal, whether it's a cow or a pig or whatever it was for food, they wasted none of that animal. And I know it's rough to talk about. You can handle it. If you can handle me, you can handle this line of discussion. The whole thing around it is, and my buddy McAnally talks about this. He's got a song called Cafe on the Corner. Talks about the plight of the farmer back when, it was some tough times in the past. And I'm not talking about the big corporate farmers who are basically funded through, a lot more elaborate finances. I'm talking about the farmer who is planting a seed, taking care of it through his wits and experience and hard work, and growing, producing a crop, and based on the bounty of that crop, feeding his family. And so I'm going to talk about that because I think I can make some parallels from the characteristics of a farmer to how we can all do better. I think there's so much to learn. And when I was in Central Valley a couple of weeks ago, you go in and you talk to them, and you can tell by looking at some of these people, they're hard workers, and they're friendly. They're usually people that have a lot of faith in something. I don't get overly religious on this, but they have faith in their ability. And I think they have to have faith in God, because without rain, without favorable weather, all of these things, that directly impacts them and the hard work. And we'll get into all that, but you shake their hand. I was talking to a man this past week, and, said, "Hey, my name's Dave," and shook his hand. And one thing that's consistent with a farmer, their hands they're not soft. I'm almost embarrassed to shake their hands. I'm such a cream puff compared to them, but I mean, they deal with real world problems and solutions, and how they face them and overcome them, and just their reaction to it. We can all learn a lot from the farmers. And my granddad used to say when he was, he didn't say it exactly this way, but when he was stressed or had problems or had a lot on his mind, he'd get his hands in the soil. He'd go get his hands dirty, which that was his connection to his farm. Happy place? I just covered happy place in his farm on his front porch, or hands in the soil. That was Papa's happy place. But let's just talk about farmers in general. I mean, what are 5 essentials for them to bring in a crop to feed their family? I mean, to live, to sustain themselves. First thing is you got to have a seed. You got to have seeds. Now, farmers don't go down to the co-op and buy a handful of seeds. Oh no, you've got to generate acres and acres of product, and you save seed, you accumulate seed, and I remember just in talking to them, a fine crop, we want more seeds from that, and sometimes you combine two different kinds of seed, and over time they learn. But you have to have a quality seed, because that's where it all comes from. That's where the product eventually comes from, one way or another. So it's so important. I mean, the seeds, you think about a bunch of different things. What seed to plant where, rotating the crops, different things are involved, but it all starts with a quality seed. And then secondly, okay, the soil. I remember driving past, I still do this. It drives my wife crazy sometimes. I don't drive her crazy, but it's an odd observation, Dave. But we'll go by and you'll see somebody who's gone in and they've done some plowing or tilling the soil, and I'll come, oh, look how rich that is. Rich meaning deep and dark. And that's supposedly rich soil. My granddad would tell me the difference. In a crop like corn or something like that, it just robs the soil of its nutrients, and you can tell a field that's had corn for a couple of years, and then like tobacco, you can look at the difference, and it's more of a brownish, dry looking, where the tobacco may be a deep dark. Worms, I remember him saying worms don't they don't stay in bad soil, and so all of that different things. So you got the high quality seed, you got the soil that, science, these guys, farmers are scientists without having all the laboratories or the test tubes and all of that. Depending on what you're wanting to grow, they know innately, just the organic matter and pH levels and the different nutrients involved. They based on that, they will put more. I remember we would go somewhere and get, and this is when he was farming for fun, not when he was farming for a living, but we would go get certain fertilizer, and he would mix his own, meaning this needs more of this or this needs more of that. Think of that on a scale to where if you don't get it right, you don't get the crop. It doesn't pay. And that has drastic consequences for your family. So you got to have a good seed. You got to have the good soil. You got to understand the water. Water, if it's going to rain, that's great. But what if it doesn't? The crop will die. What do you do as far as irrigation? How do you take care of that? I learned a lot in Mexico. I went into the interior and watched the efficiency of the farmers in Mexico. Blew my mind, because they don't do, it's not as automated. They would use, the earth and the stream nearby, and they would dig a channel, and they would water the entire crop through a series of little ditches, and they did it more manually. They didn't. They had their corn, it would dry on the vine rather than picking it and letting it dry in a silo or a storage crib. They were saying, why build all that stuff? Just don't pick it till it's ready. All these different things. And that fascinated me because of the time with Papo and on his farm. So you've got to think about that water. How are you going to do it? Enough. not too much. You know, certain times you don't want it to wash away. And so that's why farmers are so engaged in the weather. And the Farmer's Almanac. I think he had King James Bible and the Farmer's Almanac. That's boom. There you go. Because water or seasons or temperatures or weather controlled so much. And this wasn't, it's going to rain out a ball game. No, it's going to rain out a crop or dry up a crop. Or what do I do? And we're not doing it for fun. So you've got all of that. Then you got to worry about the weeds and bugs. A plague, locusts come through. You haven't heard of that in a while, but bugs are a serious problem. But weeds, you got to get the weeds out of there. I've got a podcast on that. I got a book on that. The weeds, what they do is they choke out the good plant. And if they don't choke it out, they take the nutrients from the soil that could be going to that plant. And that plant is your livelihood. So how are you gonna manage that? You've got to have. Do you use a pesticide? Do you go in and do something manually? I remember we used to watch for hours crop dusters work a field. It was just awesome. But that was business. It wasn't entertainment. And then I think the hard work of everything we've said so far, it's work, it's preparation, it's planning, it's manual labor to get all of this done, because depending on your means, a lot of this was done by hand. Hopefully you can work into having some equipment, or, a lot of times farmers would help each other. You've got this, and, if you'll come help me do this, I've got something that you don't have, and I'll come help you do that. And that's why I think the farming community is so tight. They help each other. They're all going through the same challenges. It's not it is a competition sometimes, because you want to be able to brag about your crop. However, everything's going to go to sell, and the going rate is what you're going to get. Now, if you have a higher quality, depending on the crop, you're going to get more money than a neighbor. But no one is trying to outdo anybody from I'm going to take your money. No. It's not the best winner take all. It's a community, and everybody wants to do well. But the climate and the weather, that's where the faith comes in. And I dare say, if we had the faith of farmers, we wouldn't have the mental health challenges. We wouldn't have and I'm not taking those lightly. I don't do that. However, that faith in something, that faith of the sweat of my brow, of experience, of generations, of even, you can call it science, which it is, but it's more experience and knowing, just knowing through years and years of sometimes trial and error, and then faith that we're gonna get rain. We're not gonna get storms. We're not gonna get something. And a lot of times it's the timing of it. A lot of people make a living selling hay. You can't harvest hay when it's raining. And that hay can rot. It can ruin if rain comes at the wrong time. I think this goes back to, the Indians, the Native Americans. Hunting and farming is all they had. And so that's why they would pray to the gods. That's where a lot of the idolatry comes in. Pray to the gods. If it's bad weather, somebody's messed up here. Karma's going to grab us. But that faith, the faith of a farmer, are you kidding me? So all these things, the seed, the soil, the water, the pest and weed control, and the weather, you can only control so much. However, generation after generation after generation, they dealt with these things, and they still are. And it's at such a scale in the Central Valley in California, it's almost unbelievable, the scale of that. So when I think of farmers, I think of hard work and faith and community. They're all in this together. A farmer, I told a story once. I was at the largest ag show in the world up in Visalia, California. And there were lemon farmers there. And one was from Mexico, one was from the United States, and one was from China. And they were all talking, and they had interpreters. And after a while, there was a big crowd around them. And they were talking about lemon farming. That was it. They didn't speak the same language. They didn't know each other, but they had that in common. And no matter where you are in the world, they were going through the same struggles and that sense of community. There's a corollary there. We're all going through the same stuff as well. May not be farming, but we're raising kids. We're going through challenges at work. Society has got problems. If we had that sense of community and faith and hard work, rather than thinking we're entitled to everything, hey, I don't want any labor pains. Just hand me the baby. That's not the way it works. And if you think it is, well, you're going to learn. You're going to learn. Well, one thing when I talk about the faith of a farmer, I saw this passage and I wanted to read it. The faith of a farmer is often deeply woven into the fabric of their daily life, rooted in patience, resilience, and hope. Wow. Patience, resilience, and hope. Unbelievable. Farming is a practice that requires trust. Trust in the soil, trust in the seasons, and the uncertain nature of weather and market prices. They may do all of this in the market crashes. They may have a bountiful crop, but because of market situations, it's half what it was last year. Unbelievable. And we'll talk about the finances in a minute. A farmer plants seeds with the belief that despite countless variables beyond their control, they're going to sprout and yield a harvest. They nurture their crops and livestock, balancing knowledge and skill and the understanding that they ultimately depend on forces greater than themselves. Why? Why? The unpredictability of farming teaches humility, patience and humility, as a single storm or drought can disrupt a season's work. Yet, farmers rise each day, early, I might add, with hope and determination to try again. Their faith is practical, marked by an intimate relationship with nature, which they observe and learn from. It's communal. Like I said, there's a community, as they often share their experiences, struggles, and triumphs with other farmers who understand the lifestyle. One more paragraph. This is so good. Many farmers hold on to spiritual beliefs or practices as a source of comfort, seeing their work as just part of a larger purpose. They view the land not merely as a property, but as something to be stewarded and preserved for future generations. I've heard that so many times. My papa, he wanted that farm to stay in the family, and it has. My aunt actually, she'll rent out fields just so the soil can keep producing. It's wonderful. The faith of a farmer is more than just optimism. It's a conviction that in the end their hard work and dedication will bear fruit. If not immediately, this belief drives them through both bountiful and lean years, encouraging to keep sowing, nurturing, and reaping season after season. Farming is, Mike McAnally calls it a noble endeavor. That's an understatement, but it's so true. And why would anybody do this? Because it's rewarding, definitely rewarding. It's also punishing. But I think the lessons learned by a farmer and a farmer's family, that's why they're so tough. That's why they're so resilient. They can get through anything because nothing is certain. Nothing is certain except for what they can control. And just imagine if you did the best at all you could control through work ethic and living right, and we'll call it karma and whatever. And what you couldn't control was depended on if you were a good person, how you treated other people, your attitude, all of those things. I think those things may improve a bit if that was figured into your success or your survival or all these other things. So let's not get ahead of myself. Let's dig in. So there's a lot of financial challenges. We're not talking about the reward. At the end of the crop, somebody's got to live in between harvests, the whole family. And a lot of times, I know Papa, his dad lived with him. So a lot of times you have several families right there. I know a lot of kids when they grow up, they get married and they build a house on the farm. They all live there together and they all pitch in. You got several families that have to live between harvests. So there's a high input cost. You have to buy stuff up front, meaning, okay, we've got to do all of this stuff, pay for it up front to get going with no return yet. Also, a lot of this, depending on how big the situation is or how you're doing in time of year, you have to borrow money or seek financing to live on or to pay for things up front, or maybe it's new equipment, all of that kind of stuff. And that can be very tough because banks look at spreadsheets. Banks look at sure things. They don't like risk. Farming is risky, so sometimes you can't get financing. Then I talked about it a minute ago. The price of beef went through the roof. Well, how much of that does the farmer get? Because a lot of it is different bureaucracies got to take their cut. Well, that's great. What happens when it goes through the floor? What happens when we're importing all this stuff from around the country, from all over the world that's cheaper? It drives the price of our crops down. Well, you might not have counted on that. That can happen very quickly. It can happen while your seeds are in the ground. All of a sudden now, if you have a huge crop, you're going to make half what you did, and now you've borrowed money. You've put my goodness, I'm stressed out, and I'm not even a farmer. And then land. Sometimes you have to. I can't make it with the land I've got. You'll help with somebody else. You'll partner with another farm. So you got all of these things, and then you still have to have that faith in the weather. It's just so much. So their faith and their resilience and hope is not a strategy. Oh, the hope. Hope in one hand and in the other. Oh, my goodness. So a lot of these things, I talked about community earlier. And in talking about that, they're so tight no matter what part of the world you're in. But I think, in Western Kentucky, outside the Paducah area, tobacco is the big crop there. But when I think of that, I think my granddad, Papa, used to call people by their last name because he knew them. He would see them at sales or, whether it's livestock or whatever, but at it was time for the tobacco, they grade the tobacco. And the better the grade, the more money you get. And so he met all these farmers. And they become friends because it's a sense of community, which is fantastic. But they all have primarily the same purpose, but also the same values for the most part. Now, you've got some that are more, I would say, religious than others. They all have to have the same hope. And we'll say faith from not from a religious standpoint in this regard, but I have faith that if I do this, this is what's going to happen. But it's going to take me doing all of these things and doing them well. But I've got faith that if I do that, it's going to happen. Now, you can have faith in God that he's going to help. He's going to give me some rain without too much rain. He's not going to let it frost at the wrong time and all these things. This whole community, they have these shared purposes, but also the same values. They also depend on each other, not only for that support. I can, when it rains, they can't really work. So what do? They may go into town. They may work on their equipment. They may sharpen the hose. All these different things, but they support each other. And they build these strong bonds. Usually, if it's rough weather or it's a tough year, it's tough on all of them. So you have that bond and sense of community. Also, you have generations. You know your people, but my dad, my granddad, his granddad, my kids, my grandkids, up and down your family tree, but also across the others. You know other people's families and their offspring and their, who's good workers, who's not. You base so and so's kid off of what a hard worker he was, and you would just, he's got to be a good guy. He's so and so's son. Well, also, hey, you got kids running around. They're going to marry each other, and hopefully they're marrying outside the family. Sorry about that. I'm being serious here. But anyway, you've got this. Now the community is stronger for generations. And then you think about it. It's a simple life. I mean, farming's complicated, but you get the basics down. They live simply. That's not extravagant. Back in the day, my granddad, they watched the weather on TV. That was the main thing. They had an antenna. They had 3 channels, which is common back then. But even now, I mean, you have some more sophisticated equipment and things like that. But they live simply. They get up early. They work all day. They eat dinner. And at night, they usually go to bed early because they got to get up early. It's a simple life, which is a good thing. And it's tied to nature, an appreciation of nature. You don't waste it. You don't waste anything on the farm. And then I love the traditions. When we used to go to Kentucky after they moved back to the farm, I mean, you got trade day. You got all these different things at a barn raising. You help somebody build a barn. Well, it turns into a party, a hog killing. You got that. The whole community comes around and helps you. But you have a lot of events, big picnics, big things around times of year, big things around farming events, around harvesting, around whatever. They help each other out, and then they celebrate it. So it's such a sense of community. I wish we could have that more outside of the farm. So that whole concept of reaping what you sow, that's what farmers get. They learn that. It's out of the Bible, but it is a farming analogy. It's more than an analogy. It is a truth. So that concept of reaping what you sow, it's as old as humans. The idea of, however, your actions are going to have something to do with your ultimate experience. It's a reminder that the choices we make, good or bad, are going to give us the results of that. Our intentions, our efforts, that's going to shape our future. Reaping what you sow. A farmer reaps based on how much work and knowledge and effort he puts into it. Also, faith and hope. I know that plays a role. Also, is he a good guy? Now you can say, David, that seed and that soil and that rain doesn't know if Amos Henry was a good guy or not. Okay. All right. I believe that we reap what we sow. We may not reap a crop, but we'll reap something. We'll reap a better life. You treat people well, you'll be treated better. You treat people like crap, you're going to get treated the way you deserve to be treated. So that whole reaping what we sow, straight out of the farm. And, it's a call for accountability, honestly. We're accountable for what we do. I can talk to work ethic. I have met people in business a lot of times, they feel like they're entitled to something. Well, they haven't done the work. And they're going to learn. I thought I was entitled out of college. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, I got the degree. Come on. Look at me. I'm smart. Look at these khakis and my What were they? Penny loafers. I dress the part. I've got my education. Bring it. I ain't done the work. And I'm not talking about experience on a resume. I'm talking about sweat equity. No matter what. You think you're entitled to a certain group of friends? You think you can treat people like crap, like I said a second ago, but they need to treat you right? You reap what you sow. Eventually. Yeah, we got those people out there that seem like they get away with everything. Oh, no, it's coming. Or those people that just can't catch a break. Well, they're going to reap what they sow, and eventually it all works out. I believe that, and I think that's part of the hope and the faith of a farmer. I do, both physically, mentally, and we can go spiritually if you want. I believe it. So the 5 things that I want to say about farmers that I want to apply to everything. I set all this up because you can see, hopefully, farmers need these 5 things, but these 5 things are what makes farmers so, it's characteristic of all of them. The first thing, resilience. The tough thing is you don't get resilience overnight. The setbacks, unpredictable things, all these things we've talked about farmers, from weather to all of the things that can go wrong. They have before, and how do you get through it? Almost like a sailor out there. You know what to do when a storm's coming or the waves or the wind. Farmers know the same thing. You go out, a tornado wipes your crop out. What do? Well, I've done this before. We're going to make it. Here's what we do now. Resilience. That leadership. That doesn't come overnight for anybody at home, work, or play. That's something we should strive to be, is more resilient. You see a lot less of that now with a bunch of these spoiled brats, mamby-pamby, entitled, yada, yada, yada. Second thing is patience. I couldn't be a farmer because every day I would be looking out, okay, I don't see no plants. Where's my plants? Well, you just planted them yesterday, Dave. I don't care. I am not a patient dude at all. I've got references on that. But a farmer is patient because they know that it takes time. You got to sow the seed. You got to take care of the seed. Some's going to come up, some's not. What do you do in that case? So that highs and lows of each season. Remember my story on watermelons and pecans. Watermelons are quick. They grow, 45 to 60 days. You've got watermelons. 3 for $1. Pecans, back in the 50s, 60s, $30 a bushel. $30? That'd be 90 watermelons? I'm growing pecans. Takes a pecan tree 3 to 6 years to start bearing fruit. You got the patience? But you can grow them both at the same time. We know that from the other O-Talk, right? But patience and resilience, work ethic. Work ethic. I don't know what to say. Without this, I've got no time for you. If you're not willing to do what it takes, if you're not willing to do your part, I got no time for you. It's hard. In farming, it's backbreaking. Something breaks, they have to fix it. You can't go get it repaired. You got to fix it right now, and a lot of times in the field because you got to keep going. Farming is backbreaking work. That's why they go to bed early. They're tired. They're hurting. During a certain time of year, you can't get a break. You don't call in sick. You don't take a personal day. If you get your feelings hurt, well, suck it up, Buttercup. Get back out there. We've got to put the crop out. We got to get the crop in. A day we don't work, that's when we don't have time to do this. When are we going to have time to redo it? Work ethic. Never a question with a farmer. If we had a work ethic, resilience, patience, and work ethic, that will solve 99% of your problems if you have those 3 things. I could just quit right now, but I'm not going to. Problem-solving ability. This comes from having to. You don't have a choice. I remember doing things in my life where I'm thinking, there's just no way. There's just no way. Well, I have to. I've got to solve this. I can't quit. And it comes to you. I mean, we can talk on and on about problem solving techniques. Farmers, they have to solve the problem, whether it's weather, it's equipment, it's manpower, it's timing. They have to solve this. If a fence, they got cattle and the fence is down, all their cattle's getting out, deciding what to do about a crop. Again, I talked about equipment breakdowns. Papa was doing it for fun, and yet he still had that mentality. That's what builds that resilience. Any problem comes along, you can handle it. That is not a luxury. It's a necessity. And then the fifth thing, I love it. With everything they go through, optimism. Optimism. They believe it. They work hard. Things are going to work out. My kids are going to have it better than I did. Their kids are going to have it better than them. You have tough years. You have good years. Even during a tough year, they maintain their optimism. It keeps them moving forward. It keeps them looking ahead. I talk about things to anticipate that keeps you going, that keeps you positive. There's always something. If it's time off, okay, you've got the off season. The off season brings other things. During the off season, you get ready for the season. You get ready for the pre-planting part. Then things while it's in the ground everything has a reason to be and a task ahead. Reason for optimism. Let me say those again. Resilience, patience, work ethic, problem solving, and optimism. If you have these 5 things, throw the farming aside because we're not farmers. If we had those 5 things, there's nothing that can stop us. Absolutely nothing. And I absolutely love those. That's what we should strive for. Those 5 things in everything that we do. I don't see it. And when I see challenges, people having challenges, usually it's one of these 5 things that they don't have. Your resilience. I'll go through them again. Resilience. You're not tough. You're not tough enough. You give up. You blame other people. It's not your fault. You don't take ownership. You don't learn from it, and you don't get better and tougher from that. Patience. I struggle with this one. I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait. I told you, I'm not your, the whole mentorship thing. Oh no, Dave is best taken in small doses. I'm not going to be your mentor. You don't need a mentor. You have these 5 things. You don't need a mentor. The reason I'd be a horrible mentor is, I told you. Well, you didn't do that. Well, why didn't you do it? I don't understand that. You ask my advice, I give you my advice, and you don't take it. Well, don't ask for it again. That's how impatient I am. I really am. Other people that don't know me think, oh, you were so patient. I went, oh, hang around. Resilience, patience, things come in time. Patience and maturity are tied together a lot. Yeah. Work ethic, no excuse for this. No excuse for not having it. Do the work. Do whatever it takes. Over time, you'll be able to accomplish more in less time and with less effort because you'll have it down. But you've got to pay your dues. You've got to build up resilience. You've got to do all this. And that comes from a work ethic. No matter what, this is the job. I got to do this. I've got to make X number of calls in order to get X number of sales. I got to sell X amount of product to get this commission to meet either what I have to support my family or what I want as far as my goals. It takes work. And along the way, problem solving. Whatever comes along, I can do it. I've either done it before or this is something new. Problem solving doesn't mean you have to do it all by yourself. Somebody else is going through the same thing. That's where the sense of community comes in. And then optimism. You have to know everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. That will get you through some of the tough part. I'm going to go through this now, but everything is going to be okay. So all of this, The 5 things, the sense of community, doing the right thing, helping someone out when they need your help, asking for help when you need their help. This is why you want to surround yourself with positive people. You want to get rid of the negative people. All of these things I've said. And by the way, I'm not talking about farmers anymore. They have this stuff. They've already got it. They've lived it. We can learn a lot from farmers. And I think those 5 things are probably the most important. All right. Enough about farming for the day. I hope I've given you something to think about. I appreciate you hanging on. I appreciate your support. David at otalks.com or davidotalks.com. Hit me up on TikTok, Instagram. Watch all the crazy stuff Kira posts for me. She's doing a great job. I appreciate the support, but most of all, I appreciate you talking with Dave and Giddyup.
Hey there, are you having computer problems and can't get the help you need? Is there a language barrier or other obstacles that make you feel insignificant and unappreciated? We know just how you feel, and we are here to help. We are the Amish Tech Team. The Amish Tech Team is known for their work ethic, quality craftsmanship, and attention to detail. The Amish Tech Team will ride to your house, assess the situation, and leave you feeling good about the experience. Oh, Jedediah was just a lovely young man. He didn't fix my computer, but he built me a new desk, repaired my roof, and planted 2 rows of corn in the backyard. All of our technicians at the Amish Tech Team are English speaking, respect traditions, and know their way around a grist mill. Send a letter by mail or carrier pigeon today, and when we get it, we will hop in the first buggy available and head out to your place. And the first 10 requests will get a complimentary jar of sorghum or an Amish Tech Team horseshoe to use as a paperweight. It's a real horseshoe. You don't have to put up with services that put you on hold or talk funny. Contact the Amish Tech Team and we'll be right out as soon as we get your message. And get free of our chores and load up the buggy and travel to your place, depending on traffic and the weather and those dad-blame motorized vehicles and all those bright lights and shiny signs that keep distracting the horse and tempting the youngin'.